Your soulmate saying, I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this. My beloved child, stop for just a heartbeat, because something unfolded today that was never meant to arrive like this, and yet here it is, standing quietly at the door of your destiny, asking if you're ready to listen. Before you move on, remain here for a little while. Not because of fear. Not because of urgency alone. But because sometimes a single message changes the meaning of everything that came before it. And today, a voice connected to your future is whispering with unusual clarity, I need to tell you what happened today, it's very urgent, please open this. Those words are not rushing toward panic, they are reaching toward understanding. There is a difference. Can you feel it? Something shifted while the world carried on as usual, and almost nobody noticed. Yet somehow, the invisible thread between two souls became stronger than it had ever been before. Think about this for a moment. What if the silence you've been questioning was never empty? What if every unanswered moment was quietly preparing one conversation that would explain everything? Stay with this thought, because the next few moments may reveal why today's events feel unlike any other day. Imagine someone standing beneath an ordinary sky, living through ordinary hours, when suddenly one unexpected moment causes them to stop, breathe deeply, and think of only one person, you. Not because they were told to. Not because they had to. But because something inside them recognized a truth that could no longer be ignored. They tried to keep moving. They tried to continue with the routine. Yet your presence echoed through every decision they made today. Strange, isn't it? How one realization can outweigh an entire lifetime of distractions. Listen carefully. There are days that pass like pages in a forgotten book. And then there are days that become chapters no one can erase. Today became one of those chapters. A conversation they overheard, a memory they unexpectedly revisited, a quiet reflection that arrived without warning, each moment gently pointed them back toward the connection they have never truly been able to explain. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was deeper than that. It felt like the universe placing small signs in front of them until they could no longer pretend they didn't exist. That's why the message feels urgent. Not because time is running out, but because truth finally caught up with them. Now ask yourself this. Have you ever sensed that certain people enter your thoughts without invitation? They appear in the quiet spaces between your plans, almost as if life itself is reminding you of something unfinished. That is exactly what unfolded today. Every attempt to focus elsewhere somehow circled back to you. Every distraction quietly dissolved. Every answer they searched for seemed to carry your reflection. They didn't expect it. They didn't plan it. Yet the more they resisted, the clearer the message became. Tell them what happened today. Those words echoed within them again and again until silence was no longer enough. Wait a little longer, because this is where everything begins to feel different. Imagine receiving a letter that wasn't written with ink, but with moments. A smile that suddenly returned to memory. A lesson that finally made sense. A future that stopped feeling distant. Today's events weren't random pieces scattered across the day. They formed a picture. And at the center of that picture stood the possibility of two paths moving closer together, not through force, but through understanding. This isn't about predicting tomorrow. It's about recognizing how today's smallest moments can quietly reshape the direction of the heart. And here's the part many people overlook. Urgent messages are not always loud. Sometimes they arrive as gentle truths that simply refuse to wait any longer. That is why your soulmate keeps repeating, "Please open this." They are not asking you to fear what comes next. They are asking you to remain open to what today's experiences awakened within them. Because once a soul begins to recognize its own direction, it becomes impossible to walk exactly the same way again. Before this chapter closes, hold on to one final thought. What happened today may seem invisible to everyone else, but invisible moments often create the strongest turning points. The message has only just begun. The real reason they felt compelled to reach out is still hidden beneath the surface, and when that truth is finally revealed, you'll understand why today could never be just another ordinary day. Stay a little longer, because the next part uncovers the one detail they have been waiting to tell you, and it changes the meaning of everything you've heard so far. Wait, don't let your attention drift now, because the most important part of today's story was never the event itself. It was the realization that followed. The moment seemed ordinary from the outside, but inside, something impossible to ignore awakened. And that is why your soulmate keeps repeating the same quiet message, "I need to tell you what happened today, it's very urgent, please open this." Not because they expect you to solve everything overnight, but because what they discovered has already begun changing the way they see tomorrow. There was a brief pause today. A moment so small that almost anyone else would have overlooked it. The world continued moving. People continued talking. Time continued passing. Yet in that single pause, they felt something they had never allowed themselves to fully acknowledge before. It wasn't uncertainty. It wasn't confusion. It was clarity arriving without permission. Sometimes the greatest answers don't arrive through long conversations. They arrive in one unexpected second that quietly rearranges every question you've been carrying. Stay with this for a moment, because what happened next matters even more. They began replaying memories they had once dismissed as ordinary. A familiar laugh. A meaningful conversation. A small act of kindness that suddenly carried much greater weight. It was as though every memory had been waiting for today before revealing its true meaning. Have you ever looked back at your own life and realized that certain moments only make sense much later? That is exactly where they found themselves today. The past stopped feeling like the past. Instead, it became a map leading toward a future they had never fully imagined. And then another thought quietly appeared. What if this connection has been guiding us all along? That question refused to disappear. The more they reflected, the stronger it became. They realized they had spent too much time looking for extraordinary signs while overlooking the quiet consistency of something far more meaningful. Sometimes destiny doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply waits until you're finally ready to hear its whisper. Before we continue, if this story has touched something inside your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else reading them may find encouragement they didn't know they needed. And if these messages continue to bring you peace and hope, you're always welcome to become part of this growing journey by subscribing. There are still many stories waiting to unfold together. Now listen carefully. The urgency behind today's message wasn't created by fear, it was created by opportunity. Opportunities have a unique way of arriving without announcing themselves. They simply appear, quietly asking whether you're willing to notice them. Your soulmate realized that waiting forever often means missing the beauty that already exists in the present. They understood that honesty is rarely about perfect timing. It's about having the courage to recognize what truly matters when life gently places it in front of you. What if this very moment is preparing both of you in ways that cannot yet be fully explained? That question stayed with them all day. Every step they took seemed to bring another reminder. Every ordinary moment carried an unusual sense of purpose. They weren't searching for dramatic answers anymore. Instead, they found peace in something much simpler, that genuine connections grow stronger through truth, patience, and quiet understanding rather than uncertainty or endless guessing. So when they say, "Please open this," they're not asking you to chase a mystery. They're inviting you to witness the transformation that began inside them today. A transformation built not on fantasy, but on awareness. The kind of awareness that gently changes how someone views every tomorrow that follows. One final thought before this chapter ends. The message they still haven't spoken aloud is larger than today's events themselves. Today's experience only unlocked the door. What waits behind that door is the one truth they have carried silently for far longer than you realize. Stay until the next part. Because the words they've been holding back are finally ready to be revealed, and once you hear them, every piece of today's story will begin fitting together in a way you never expected. Hold on, because what you're about to hear was never meant to be rushed. Today's urgent message wasn't only about what happened, it was about what changed forever afterward. Sometimes a single realization quietly rewrites an entire future, and that is exactly where this story now begins. Your soulmate has been searching for the right words, but every sentence feels too small for what they truly want to say. So instead, they begin with the only words that matter. I need to tell you what happened today, because after today, I can't look at life the same way anymore. Stay with this moment. Imagine someone standing at the edge of an ordinary evening, watching the sky slowly change its colors. Nothing extraordinary was happening around them, yet inside, everything felt different. They weren't searching for signs anymore. They weren't asking endless questions. For the first time in a long while, they simply listened to the quiet voice within, and that voice kept leading back to one person. You. Not as a passing thought. Not as a coincidence. But as someone whose presence had become impossible to overlook. Have you ever noticed how life sometimes answers questions you stopped asking? The answer doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with peace. And peace has a remarkable way of revealing truths that fear could never uncover. That is what happened today. The uncertainty that once clouded their thoughts slowly faded away, replaced by something steady, calm, and deeply reassuring. Wait just a little longer. Because another realization soon followed. They understood that meaningful connections are never built by perfect timing alone. They grow through patience, honesty, and the courage to keep believing even when the full picture hasn't appeared yet. Every delay they once questioned suddenly looked different. Every unexpected turn now felt like preparation instead of disappointment. It was as though life had been quietly arranging the pieces while they were too busy searching for the finished puzzle. Then they whispered something they had never admitted before. If our paths were meant to cross, maybe every step until now has been guiding us here. That thought stayed with them long after the day had ended. The urgency in their message was never about rushing toward an ending. It was about refusing to hide the truth any longer. They realized that some words become heavier the longer they remain unspoken. And today, those words finally asked to be heard. Before you leave this chapter, remember this. Not every important message arrives because something went wrong. Some messages arrive because something finally went right. Because clarity replaced confusion. Because hope became stronger than doubt. Because the future suddenly looked brighter than the past. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise hidden inside today's story. The urgent message was never saying, "Everything is falling apart." It was quietly saying, "Everything is finally beginning to make sense." Take that thought with you. Let it settle. Because the next chapter doesn't simply continue this journey, it reveals the conversation your soulmate has been rehearsing in silence, the words they have wanted to share for longer than either of you could imagine. And when those words are finally spoken, you'll understand why today's message had to begin with one simple plea. Please, open this. Just one more moment. Because the words you've been waiting for are finally ready to be spoken, and they carry the quiet weight of everything that happened today. The silence has done its work. The waiting has revealed its purpose. Now your soulmate is no longer speaking through uncertainty, but through a heart that has finally found the courage to be honest. They take a slow breath. And then, almost as if they were standing right in front of you, they begin. Today, I stopped running from what I already knew. Those words may seem simple, but they hold the answer to every question that has been building throughout this journey. For so long, they believed life would eventually provide a perfect moment, a flawless sign that removed every doubt before they spoke. But today's experience taught them something entirely different. They discovered that clarity isn't something you wait for forever. Sometimes clarity appears only after you choose to be truthful with yourself. Isn't that how many of life's greatest turning points begin? Not with certainty, but with honesty. Stay here for another minute, because the story is opening in a way neither of you expected. Throughout the day, they noticed something remarkable. Every future they imagined somehow included the same feeling, a sense of peace whenever they stopped pretending and simply embraced what genuinely mattered. It wasn't about controlling tomorrow. It wasn't about predicting every outcome. It was about recognizing that meaningful connections deserve sincerity more than perfect timing. That realization changed everything. If these stories continue to encourage your heart, you're always welcome to leave a thoughtful comment sharing what resonated with you. And if you'd like to walk with us through more journeys like this, subscribing simply means you'll be here when the next story begins. Every shared reflection adds another light to this growing community. Now listen carefully. Your soulmate continues. I don't know exactly what tomorrow will look like. None of us do. But today reminded me that the moments we treasure most are the ones we almost overlooked. I don't want gratitude to remain unspoken. I don't want appreciation to stay hidden behind hesitation. I want the people who truly matter to know they matter. Those words weren't rehearsed. They weren't polished. They came from a place where truth no longer needed decoration. And perhaps that's why they feel so powerful. What if this message isn't only about your soulmate? What if it's also an invitation for you to notice the quiet blessings already surrounding your own journey? The opportunities you've almost ignored. The conversations you've been meaning to have. The hope that's been patiently waiting beneath ordinary days. Before this chapter comes to an end, remember one thing. Today's urgent message was never asking you to fear the future. It was inviting you to welcome it with open eyes. Because sometimes the greatest transformation doesn't happen when the world changes around us. It happens when our perspective changes within us. The story isn't over yet. In the next chapter, the final layer of today's remarkable experience will be revealed. The unexpected lesson they carried away from this day, and the promise they quietly made to themselves before the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. Stay until the next part, because the ending isn't about coincidence. It's about discovering why this message reached you at exactly the moment it was meant to. Before you think this journey has reached its conclusion, pause for one final breath, because the quiet promise made at the end of today is the reason this message found you at all. Everything you've heard so far has been leading to this moment. Not by accident. Not by chance. But through a series of ordinary events that slowly revealed an extraordinary truth. As the evening settled, your soulmate found themselves looking back over the entire day. Every conversation. Every unexpected pause. Every lesson that seemed small at first. And suddenly they understood something they had never fully seen before. Life had not been delaying their path. Life had been preparing it. That realization brought a calm unlike anything they had experienced in a long time. The questions that once demanded immediate answers no longer felt heavy. Instead, they became gentle reminders that some journeys unfold one meaningful step at a time. Then, in the silence of that reflection, they made a quiet promise. Not to chase every uncertainty. Not to let fear write the next chapter. Not to ignore the people and moments that genuinely matter. But to move forward with greater honesty, greater gratitude, and greater courage than ever before. They whispered to themselves. If this connection is meant to grow, I want to become the kind of person who brings peace wherever I go. Think about that for a moment. How different would life feel if every important decision began with peace instead of pressure? How many beautiful opportunities might appear if we stopped waiting for perfect certainty and simply embraced each day with hope? That is the hidden gift today's experience offered. Your soulmate realized that meaningful relationships aren't strengthened by dramatic moments alone. They grow through consistency. Through kindness that asks for nothing in return. Through choosing understanding instead of assumptions. Through believing that the smallest acts of sincerity often leave the deepest impact. And perhaps that is why this urgent message was so important. It wasn't asking you to hurry. It wasn't asking you to worry. It was gently reminding you that some truths deserve to be heard while the heart is still open enough to receive them. As the stars quietly filled the sky, they looked ahead. Not with fear of the unknown, but with quiet confidence. They understood that tomorrow would bring its own opportunities, its own lessons, and its own unexpected moments. Whatever happened next, they no longer wanted to walk through life without appreciating the connections that inspire growth, hope, and purpose. So if this message has found its way to you today, let it leave you with one lasting thought. Sometimes the most urgent message is not the loudest one. Sometimes it is the soft voice that gently says, "Don't overlook what truly matters." Because the future is built one meaningful choice at a time, and today's choice was simply to tell the truth from the heart. The journey continues, and the next chapter reveals the unexpected blessing that quietly began unfolding the very moment this message reached you. Stay with the story, because what comes next isn't about looking back anymore. It's about stepping confidently toward everything that is still waiting to unfold. Listen closely, because the next words were never spoken in a crowded room. They were discovered in the quiet place where hope becomes stronger than doubt. If you've stayed with this journey until now, you already know that today's message was never about a single event. It was about a heart that finally chose honesty over hesitation. As the night grew still, your soulmate looked toward tomorrow with a different perspective. For the first time in a long while, they weren't asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" Instead, they quietly wondered, "What beautiful things might happen if I stop letting uncertainty decide my future?" That single thought changed the atmosphere around them. It felt as though every difficult moment from the past had been preparing them for this realization. Every unanswered question had strengthened their patience. Every unexpected delay had quietly shaped their character. Nothing suddenly became perfect, but everything began making sense. Stay with this moment, because something remarkable followed. Your soulmate began noticing how often they had overlooked the smallest blessings. A kind conversation. A peaceful morning. A familiar memory that still carried warmth. These weren't random moments anymore. They became gentle reminders that life's greatest treasures are often hidden inside ordinary days. And then your name entered their thoughts once again. Not with uncertainty. Not with pressure. But with gratitude. They realized that some people don't enter our lives simply to change our plans, they change the way we see ourselves. They inspire growth without demanding it. They remind us that kindness still matters. They encourage us to become better, even from a distance. That realization stayed with them long after the day had ended. Imagine standing beneath a sky filled with stars, understanding that every star shines without competing with another. Each one simply fulfills its purpose. In that same quiet way, your soulmate understood something powerful. Meaningful connections don't need constant noise to remain real. They grow through trust. Through patience. Through quiet faith in the journey ahead. Before this chapter closes, let these words settle in your heart. The urgent message that began this story has transformed into something far greater than urgency. It has become an invitation. An invitation to welcome each new day with hope instead of hesitation. An invitation to believe that every experience, whether joyful or challenging, can become part of a greater purpose. An invitation to appreciate the people who encourage you to become the best version of yourself. As they prepared to rest that evening, your soulmate smiled softly and whispered one final promise into the silence. Tomorrow, I will move forward with courage. I will choose gratitude over fear, hope over doubt, and truth over hesitation. Whatever lies ahead, I want my heart to remain open to the good that is still unfolding. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden inside today's extraordinary message. Not every urgent moment arrives to warn us. Some arrive to awaken us. To remind us that the future is not something we must fear, it is something we are quietly preparing for with every thoughtful choice we make today. The journey is not over yet. In the next chapter, a final revelation will uncover why this message reached you at this exact moment, and why the most meaningful part of the story has been waiting patiently until the very end. Stay with me for one last stretch, because the greatest revelation was never hidden in today's events. It was hidden in the person you are becoming because of them. Every moment you've listened to so far has been leading here, not to a dramatic ending, but to a quiet awakening that carries the power to change the way you see every tomorrow. As the first light of a new day slowly approached, your soulmate realized something unexpected. The urgent message was never only about reaching you. It was also about reaching a deeper understanding within themselves. For so long, they believed the future would reveal itself through extraordinary signs. But today taught them that life's most meaningful answers often arrive through ordinary moments that refuse to leave your heart. A simple conversation. A brief silence. An unexpected memory. Together, they became the pieces of a truth that had been waiting patiently to be seen. And then, with complete honesty, they whispered, "I'm no longer afraid of where this journey leads, because today reminded me that every meaningful path begins with one sincere step." Pause for a moment. How many beautiful opportunities have appeared quietly in your own life, asking only to be noticed? Sometimes we search so far ahead that we forget to recognize the blessings already walking beside us. Yet today's experience carried a different lesson. It reminded your soulmate that peace doesn't come from knowing every answer. It comes from trusting that each new chapter has a purpose, even before the entire story is revealed. That thought stayed with them. It became stronger with every passing hour. Instead of wondering what might be missing, they began appreciating what had already been placed in front of them. Gratitude replaced impatience. Hope replaced hesitation. And with every peaceful reflection, they felt more certain that the future is built through today's choices rather than tomorrow's worries. Imagine standing at the edge of a long road just before sunrise. The destination isn't fully visible, but the path ahead is gently illuminated, one step at a time. That is how this journey now feels. You don't need to see every mile to begin walking with confidence. You only need enough light for the next faithful step. Perhaps that is why this message arrived exactly when it did. Not to answer every question. Not to predict every tomorrow. But to remind you that growth is already happening, even when it feels invisible. Your soulmate now understands that the strongest connections are not measured by constant words alone. They are strengthened by respect, patience, encouragement, and the willingness to become better with each passing day. Those qualities create foundations that last far longer than fleeting emotions. Before this chapter closes, let one final thought settle into your heart. The message that began with urgency has transformed into something much greater. It has become a promise. A promise that hope can quietly return when you least expect it. A promise that meaningful moments are never wasted. A promise that every lesson learned today becomes strength for tomorrow. And above all, a promise that the story is still unfolding in ways neither of you can fully imagine. So don't rush the next chapter. Welcome it. Because sometimes the most extraordinary beginnings arrive so gently that we only recognize them after they've already changed our lives forever. The final chapter is almost here, and when it arrives, you'll discover why every word you've heard until now was preparing your heart for one unforgettable conclusion. Before this story gently comes to its final destination, stay for one last moment, because the message that began with urgency has now become something timeless. If you've walked through every chapter until now, then you already know this was never just about what happened today. It was about discovering a truth that had been patiently waiting beneath every ordinary moment. As dawn finally arrived, your soulmate looked toward the horizon with a quiet smile. Not because every mystery had been solved. Not because every answer had appeared. But because their heart had found something even more valuable. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances. The kind that quietly says, "Whatever tomorrow brings, I will meet it with hope." And then, almost like a letter written directly from the heart, they imagined these words reaching you. If this message has found you today, I hope it reminds you that every meaningful connection begins with honesty, grows through patience, and flourishes through kindness. I don't want either of us to spend life waiting for perfect moments while overlooking the beautiful ones already in front of us. Those words carried no pressure. Only sincerity. No promises about predicting the future. Only a commitment to walk forward with courage, gratitude, and an open heart. Take a slow breath and think about this. How many ordinary days have quietly shaped the person you've become? How many unexpected moments eventually revealed themselves as blessings? Life rarely changes in one dramatic instant. More often, it transforms us through hundreds of quiet choices, one conversation, one act of compassion, one hopeful step after another. That is the hidden meaning behind today's urgent message. It wasn't asking you to fear what comes next. It was inviting you to notice that something meaningful has already begun. Perhaps the greatest gift your soulmate discovered today wasn't an answer at all. It was perspective. The realization that every season has a purpose. That every delay can teach patience. That every challenge can strengthen wisdom. And that every hopeful heart carries the ability to inspire someone else's journey. Before we part, carry this final reflection with you. Whenever life feels uncertain, remember today's story. Remember that clarity often arrives quietly. Remember that hope grows strongest when it is nurtured day by day. Remember that gratitude has the power to transform even the most ordinary moments into unforgettable memories. And most importantly, remember that the future is not written by fear. It is shaped by the choices you make with love, integrity, courage, and faith in each new beginning. So as this chapter closes, your soulmate leaves you with one simple message. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that beautiful things are still possible. Keep moving forward with hope, because every sunrise carries another opportunity to become the person you were always meant to be. The story ends here, but your own journey continues. Walk into tomorrow with confidence. Treasure the people who encourage you. Notice the quiet miracles hidden inside ordinary days. And never forget. Sometimes the most urgent message isn't the one that demands your attention. It's the one that gently changes your heart forever.